Okay, we're going to learn the letter that Tzemach Tzedek. We learned a few times before, but today we're just going to focus on the text of the letter as explained in this pamphlet that I sent you. And we're just going to go straight to the words of Tzemach Tzedek. And as today's anniversary of Tzemach Tzedek, the anniversary of passing the Tzemach Tzedek, it's a special, special thing to learn and to prepare for Pesach because it gives us a sense of what it means to trust in Hashem and believe in Hashem. It gives us the tools of how to do this. So, but 200 years ago, Tzemach Tzedek wrote to a person who was in a state of weak-heartedness, and he gives us practical advice about how to deal with fear. And together with this, he gives us a very broad and profound explanation about the impact of our behavior, our thought, our words, and our action on our feelings of fear specifically, and all of our feelings, based upon Torah and Hasidic sources. So we're going to learn the words of Tzemach Tzedek, and as those who publish this pamphlet, the way they explain. Tzemach Tzedek writes, regarding your request to how to deal with your weak-heartedness. Weak-heartedness is an expression in the Torah about fear. The heart becomes soft and weak because of fear. Although the Tzemach Tzedek continues, it's for naught. I am not holding myself back from writing to you what is in my heart. Although your weak-heartedness has no basis and logic dictates that you're afraid of something which warrants no fear, nevertheless, I am not holding myself back from writing to you what I think and feel about this fear. Certainly, you have to ask Hashem to have joy. As the Torah says, the prayer of King David, let the soul of your servant rejoice. And another prayer reads, remove from us groaning and sighing. So it is, although it is true that you need to dive into Hashem and to ask Him that He should give us joy and He should remove from us sadness and sighing, as those verses indicate. But nevertheless, there is a kind of fear that a person causes himself, and a person has the choice and the volition to hold himself back from this fear. Although it's important to pray, to ask Hashem for help, but there is a kind of fear that a person causes himself. And you have the free choice and the ability to hold yourself back from this fear, and through this to be relaxed, happy, and glad-hearted. You might think that fear is a result of objective facts like health problems or earning a livelihood. Nevertheless, in the end, what causes a fear is a person himself. A person has the ability, it's a choice, how to conduct his feelings, and he could choose to go away from the fear and to correct his experiences, his unhealthy experiences, unhealthy feelings. So Tzemach Tzedek will explain this principle that a person can control his feelings of fear and other feelings. With the help of Torah sources, he proves this. A clear proof for this, Tzemach Tzedek continues, is from the fact that we were commanded not to be afraid at wartime. As the Torah says, do not let your hearts become soft. And Maimonides and the Tzemach and Parsha Shoftim count this as one of the 613 commandments. In the Torah, there's a clear, explicit commandment not to be afraid at wartime. This commandment is counted by those who count the number of mitzvahs as one of the 613. Fear at wartime is real. Those who are fighting on the battlefield are in actual danger. They could, God forbid, get wounded or worse. Seemingly, what is more natural than being afraid at that time? And yet the Torah forbids us to be afraid at wartime. So it seems to be a wondrous thing. What should a person do if his heart is trembling and he is afraid of seeing blood at wartime? At first glance, this commandment of the Torah is wondrous. A person is on the battlefield and he sees, Rahman al-Islam, blood being spilled. How do you ask of him not to be afraid in this natural fear in this kind of circumstance? There are people that don't understand how to hold themselves back from a fear that, from an objective standpoint, is a lot less frightening than war. So for sure, at wartime, how can the Torah expect us not to be afraid? And it's known that all the commandments of Hashem are only in those things that we have a free choice to do or not to do. As Maimonides writes in his 8-chapter introduction to Ethics of Our Fathers, since we're talking about a commandment of the Torah, holding ourselves back from being afraid must be dependent on man's choice. If it wouldn't be in man's choice, then the Torah wouldn't command us to do anything. The Torah, every mitzvah the person is commanded to do, is based upon these fundamental truths. You have the ability to fulfill it, and you have the choice. If you have the ability to fulfill it, and you have the choice whether to fulfill it or not. So the answer is this: every person has 3 garments for his soul: thought, speech, and action. We need to make a distinction between the soul powers and the garments of the soul. The soul powers include pleasure, desire, intellect, our natural feelings, and they come to expression through various tools, garments of the soul. The garments and the vessels of the soul, the expression of the soul, are our thoughts, words, and action. And they are the predominant portion of man's behavior. The garments of the soul are the main parts of man's behavior. The word behavior in Hebrew also comes from the word to be led, because these things, our behavior is what leads us. When a person has the choice and the ability to think and to speak and to do as he desires in his mind, a person has some desire in his mind. He has the free choice and the ability to think, to speak, and to do according to that desire. A person chooses what he wants to do and what he wants to hold himself back from doing, when to speak and when to be quiet, and also what to talk about. Even his thoughts, he has the ability to dominate his thoughts and to choose what thoughts he wants to allow to enter his mind and what thoughts he wants to refuse entry to his mind. And even if he is afraid in his heart, he's able to completely divest his thoughts, words, and action. Meaning, even when a person is engulfed with a feeling of fear in his heart because of a frightening situation that he is in, like example of war, he's able to remove this fear. Yes, not directly from his heart, but he can remove the fear from the garments of his soul, from his thought, speech, and action. He's able not to do actions that express fear, not to speak words that bring him fear, that express fear, and even not to think thoughts of fear. The main thing is not to think and speak about this at all, but to do the opposite. The main meaning of removing and divesting yourself is a strong decision, a firm decision, or to resolve, to accept upon yourself not to think, not to speak about your fear at all, but instead to focus on the opposite kinds of thoughts, that thoughts that calm a person, that strengthen his faith and trust against this fear, and also to express those thoughts in his words. As the Alter writes in chapter 14 in Tanya, chapter 14, the Alter says that every person has the ability and the choice to control his thoughts, his words, and his actions. Our words and actions, it's easier for us to understand that they are within our jurisdiction. But our thoughts, which are deeper, more subtle, it's harder to understand this. So in order to understand this, how this is also within man's behavior, we need to have a little bit of a more broader explanation. And Tzemach continues to explain more about how we're able to control our thoughts. He continues. This is the meaning of the Torah's commandment: do not be afraid. What the Torah means is do not think about your fear. And that's what Maimonides writes in chapter 7 of the Laws of Kings. Anyone who frightens himself and thinks thoughts is violating a biblical commandment. According to this explanation, we're able to answer the question we started with. How is it possible that the Torah commands us not to be afraid at wartime? The intent of the Torah's command is don't think about the fear. Thought is one of the garments of the soul, and it is within the jurisdiction of man. And therefore, even at wartime, when a person identifies a vivid fear, and he's afraid in his heart from true danger. He has the choice whether to think about this fear or to hold himself back from this fear. And that's what Maimonides writes, explaining this mitzvah. The commandment not to be afraid means that a person should not cause himself to be frightened with thoughts of fear. If he consciously thinks thoughts of fear, he is violating this prohibition. The automatic fear that he feels in his heart, that's natural. That's not within man's choice. And that's not prohibited. The opening the door for the fear and allowing that fear to come into your thoughts, that is something you can control, and that is forbidden. You may ask, since the fear is already in the heart, what will the effort of holding it back from our thoughts do? It's anyways in our hearts, and we anyways have that feeling, and we can't control the feeling in our hearts. So what's the point of not letting it into your mind? So Tzedek continues and explains. As soon as you decide, as soon as you don't think about this at all, automatically the fear will be removed from your heart. At least the fear will be as if you're asleep. You don't feel the fear in your body. After a few days, the fear will be as if the fear is asleep and it's not felt in the body. And after a few days, the fear will go away completely until it won't enter your mind even as a passing thought. And that's the meaning of the Torah's instruction. Do not let your heart become soft. The thoughts of fear, that is what nourishes the fear and strengthens the fear. If a person consciously thinks about what he's afraid of, that's forbidden. And he should hold himself back from these thoughts. He should make a great effort and think about other things. He should think about his role to fight and to win the war. He should think about the protection that Hashem is giving him. And automatically the fear in his heart will go away. And even if the fear does not go away completely, nevertheless, it will become a lot less, it will become more objective. Sorry, it will become less active and less felt. You won't feel it as much. It won't be so active as a person who's asleep doesn't feel the things that he's frightened of when he's awake. And that's the meaning of the Torah's commandment: do not let your hearts be soft. These words aren't only relevant in situations where fear is not justified, where fear is imaginary, where fear is extreme. And in situations where you could just use your mind and clarify it, and you could understand that the fear is not justified. The fear has no basis, and you control your feelings with analyzation. This concept is also pertinent in situations where a person is actually in danger, like at wartime. Even in these situations, a person can control his fear. And the note over here, they bring a story of a soldier who was manning a tank, and he saw the turret of another tank aimed at his tank. And so he was engulfed with fear. He couldn't give a commandment to the officer that was with him in the tank, couldn't do anything, which is what he should have done, because that's what you're supposed to do when you're manning a tank. You give instruction to defend and to attack. But he couldn't. He was full of fear. But he remembered before going out to battle, as many soldiers did and do, they reviewed the words of Maimonides. And Maimonides says, you're not allowed to let thoughts of fear into your mind. So he immediately remembered this, and he thought to himself, what should I think about? I have to think about what I'm supposed to do. And he immediately gave the commandment to the subordinate officer, shoot. And right away the officer shot, and the headline of the newspaper was, Maimonides wins the battle. So even in situations where there is a justified reason to be afraid, even in those situations, we're able to overcome the fear. The very first tool Tzedek teaches us is connected to our power of thoughts. Let's pay attention to this. We're not talking about clarifying with our minds if the fear is logical or not. We're talking about behavior. We're talking about a person moving his thoughts away And instead of continuing to think about the thing that is frightening him, he instead moves, he focuses his thoughts to a different place. He uses, um, using this tool will allow him to overcome his fear. In other words, when a person is in a situation where he is standing in front of something frightening, he has two choices about what to think about. One choice is, one possibility is, one option is to think about the danger he is in and about the frightening event. This choice will strengthen his fear. The other option is to move his thoughts from this frightening event, instead to think about practically what should he do at this moment, what is his role, and other things, similar thoughts. That's the meaning of the words silika machshava, removing thoughts. To direct your thoughts to be calibrated in the appropriate place, and to hold your thoughts from continuing to veer off to the sides where they automatically are drawn to, and instead to focus your thoughts to where they need to be directed. This this removal of your thoughts from the thoughts of fear will also remove the feelings of fear in your heart, and this is also the way to affect other feelings as well. The Tzedek continues in the letter to explain why this is true. The reason why removing your thoughts will take away your fears, because all of the feelings of a person are nourished in the power of das. Das is called in the Zohar the key that includes all six. Feelings are a revelation of the soul in a certain way. In order to have a feeling, das, which das means relevance, thinking about how this is relevant, how this affects me, how this thing affects me, that's what causes feelings. For example, if a person sees, our power of sight is connected to our chachma, you see a certain event, the event is a dangerous event. And from your experience, you understand, your bina, you understand the power to come to conclusions, come to the conclusion that what's going to happen. So your sight and your understanding do not obligate that this event will cause you to have inner feelings. But the moment that you connect this event to your life, then that will certainly force these feelings. So if you start thinking about this event is going to happen to you, or it may happen to you, then you'll be afraid. This connection, this inner connection, which that's what das means, this relevance of this event to you, that's what causes your feelings in your heart. And once you already have those feelings, thinking further about this relevance to you, that will strengthen those feelings, that will exacerbate those feelings. And that's the meaning of what the Zohar says, that all feelings come from das. Das, the Zohar says, is called the key that includes all six feelings. By your das, by your power of establishing relevance, by your das being vested in your feelings through your thoughts, that's what animates your feelings. And therefore, by removing your thoughts, automatically that will remove your das from these feelings, and then the feeling will not be aroused, and it will be as if it will dissipate, and it will be as if it never existed. In these few lines, the Tzemach Tzedek is telling us a very fundamental thing about the effect of our das on our feelings. Das, again, is establishing relevance. It is what arouses feelings in our heart. But what is the tool that creates the relevance inside us? And what is the tool that creates this relevance and reveals the relevance to this event, to this thing, to us? What the tool that creates the relevance is our thoughts. Let's say this more clearly. Das is one of the soul powers, intellectual soul powers. Feelings and the heart, that's a soul power for emotion. Thought is not a soul power. Thought is merely a tool. Thought is merely a vessel. What transfers our power of das to our feelings, what transfers our power of the intellectual power of creating relevance of das to our feelings, it won't naturally flow. In order for there for things to flow from our intellect to our feelings, there has to be thoughts. In simple words, in order that a certain event should affect our feelings, a person has to think about the connection between this event and himself. As long as he hasn't thought about it in his mind, even if it exists, that means practically this is an event that can affect him. As we gave the example of war, the feelings will not be aroused. In order that his connection to this event will arouse feelings in order for the fact that this event the fact that this event will affect him, that won't necessitate it doesn't necessitate that he'll have feelings in his heart. In order for that event to affect the feelings in his heart, that he needs to first be conscious of it. If a person becomes conscious of it through his thoughts, those thoughts will bring to his feelings. The opposite is also true. If a person will not think about this event and will not think about how this event affects him, the feeling of fear will not be aroused. So we learn an important rule here. The more a person thinks about a certain event and the relevance of the event to himself, he brings himself into this experience and he creates a storm of feelings within himself. And that's the reason why a certain event, an event that didn't take more than a few seconds or a few minutes, that event can be engraved in the soul very deeply to the point of creating trauma. This event itself only lasted a very short amount of time, but his thoughts about this event again and again cause the person to experience it every moment anew, every time he thinks about it anew, as if he is now going through this event. This entry transforms the event to a continuous event, and his continuous entries into this event strengthen the feelings that he had at the time of the event. On the other hand, it's possible that a certain event, according to his logic, are relevant to him. His logic will say this event is going to affect you. But nevertheless, it's possible that an event that logically will affect you will not affect your feelings. What does it depend on? When will it affect your feelings and when won't it? If a person does not allow this, that content, the garment in his soul to be revealed in, to be dressed in, doesn't allow what he understands in his mind to have any expression in his thoughts, doesn't give it the event, the content that he understands in his mind, doesn't give it any place to be expressed inside of him, but instead he focuses his thoughts on other things, the feeling in his heart will go away. And the feeling will completely be negated and the fear will dissipate, will go away. So controlling his thoughts intentionally is called hasachas hadas. What he's doing is he is removing his connection to this event. That's that removing of his thoughts from the event, removing his connection to the event. That's what takes away this feeling of fear. So now we have an important understanding of the influence of our thoughts on our feelings. And from this understanding, we can learn that by removing our thoughts from a certain theme, from a certain idea, to another theme, another idea, it's possible to lessen the powerful feelings in the heart or to completely erase those feelings. Tzemach continues and says this: another greater proof for this truth is from the laws of forbidden relationships. The Talmud says that a man cannot be raped, even if he is brought close to someone who he is forbidden to be with. It's not possible to say that he is forced, because if he would not pay attention, he would not be aroused. And although this is something that seems to be something that is reflexive, and yet the Torah says he is given the death penalty for this. He's stoned for violating these forbidden relationships. That's what Maimonides writes. That the Gemara says that a person has the ability also, the Gemara says, to be frightened or not to be frightened. This law about forbidden relationships teaches us that even an action which seems to be automatic and it has to do with the reflexes, it is also dependent on the desire and a person's passion, and a person can control this with his thoughts, which is within man's jurisdiction. So you've learned that it's possible to lessen a feeling by removing your thoughts. And not only are you able to lessen the feeling, but to begin with, to create the feeling, even a natural physical feeling, thought is necessary. Without thought, the feeling will not be aroused. As it says in the Gemara, man has thoughts of faith and trust in Hashem can overwhelm feelings of fear. From all the way above, we can learn a technique, a fundamental and important technique about how to deal with feelings that that derail a person, that engulf a person. Feelings depend on our thoughts. The longer our thoughts are about something, the more the feeling will be exacerbated. And the less our thoughts are about a certain thing, the less our feelings will be. So it's understood that thoughts don't work by themselves. A person has to understand and to choose between thoughts that he wants to be under their influence and to focus on those thoughts that he wants to be under their influence, and he has to choose between those kinds of thoughts and other thoughts that he does not want to be under the influence of those thoughts, and to remove his thoughts from those kind of thoughts that aren't good for him. Some people think that you should let your thoughts just flow by themselves freely, automatically, and not to control them. In their opinion, controlling your thoughts is running away from yourself. It's you're forcing yourself, you're coercing yourself. But this is really a mistake. Controlling your thoughts is not running away from yourself. On the contrary, it's an expression of yourself. It's an expression of yourself in a very mature way, in a way that you're making a choice. You're choosing something. You're choosing a path that will help you. In other words, let's go back to the example of war. If the soldier will allow his automatic thoughts to control him, he is endangering himself. Controlling his thoughts, directing his thoughts, that is the only way, specifically, that will allow him to do the best in his role in wartime. That can save his life. And just like this is true in wartime, so too is this in life, in the flow of life. If a person feels that certain feelings are set in him, they're controlling him, these feelings are controlling him, he needs to strengthen in himself this important principle of being aware, being cognizant of his free choice, and to actually express this free choice and to choose. If he will choose thoughts that are not good for him, and to remove his thoughts, a person has. Let's go back. A person has to be aware that's if you're aware that certain feelings are in you that shouldn't be there, you need to strengthen yourself this principle that you have free will to direct your thoughts. And if you will choose certain thoughts to think about, and you will remove your thoughts from other ones, there will be an immediate effect on your feelings. And you'll see and you'll notice this immediately. So Tzedek continues. The main meaning of removing your thoughts, second, your thoughts. When you move your thoughts, that will affect your feelings. The main meaning of Hesach Hadas, the main way to remove your thoughts is by guarding your thoughts and dressing them in other things. In other words, It's not, you can't just say, I'm not going to think about it, right? You have to dress your thoughts, even in things that are worldly things, things that are needed for your life, things you need to think about, things that bring you joy. Think of the Torah of Hashem, which every day a person studies Torah. The Torah says it brings you joy by setting times to study Torah. The main means through which to control your thoughts of fear is not by fighting with them internally. It's not by trying to use all your might not to think about them. That's not the way you win this war. Rather, it's not by fighting a war. Rather, it's by directing your thoughts on other things. The person is not able to think two thoughts about because a person is incapable of thinking two thoughts at the same time. So directing your thoughts into those things you choose will automatically remove from yourself thoughts of fear. What should you think about? So think about things that will benefit you. Think about things that you need in the world, things that bring you joy, things that you're able to use for the service of Hashem. Think about what you need to buy in the store. Think about visiting your children. Think about your family. This path that the Tzemach Tzedek tells us to travel in, to direct our thoughts, this path is the best path, is a study of Torah. Study of Torah brings a person joy, and especially having a set time to study Torah. Especially, Tzemach Tzedek continues, setting a set time to learn with someone else, both the revealed parts of Torah, like the code of Jewish law, the laws of blessings, the laws of Shema, the laws of prayer, and other similar things, and learning the inner dimension of Torah, learning Chassidus. Tzemach Tzedek is mentioning another tool that will help us control our thoughts. That is having a friend. You learning Torah with a friend will allow a person to direct his thoughts and the things he needs to direct his thoughts to. Talking with a friend allow a person more easily to free himself from unhealthy thoughts and to focus himself on positive and beneficial things, especially by studying together. And parenthetically, Tzemach Tzedek mentions what to learn: Nigla, Chassidus, Halacha, Chassidus, and also Tzemach Tzedek.
You're on mute.
They will share with anyone who is willing to listen how much they're suffering. They feel bad and their spirit is down. And the more they talk about their bad feelings, their bad experiences, those bad feelings get strengthened. And therefore, holding yourself back from speaking in a negative way will lessen the volume that these feelings have, and they will lessen their impact, lessen their power. On the contrary, Tzemach Tzedek continues, you should show yourself always. You should express yourself always with feelings of movement of. 1 second. 1 second. Hold on. Sorry. A person should instead of Tzemach Tzedek says now what should you talk about? What should you do? Tzemach Tzedek says you should always express yourself with movements that express joy, as if you're full of joy in your heart, even though you don't have it yet in your heart. But the end is that's what you will have in your heart. Together with holding yourself back from doing things that create negative feelings, like speaking negatively, speaking about things that make you feel bad, you should also do things that categorize joy. You should do things that express joy. Even though you may feel that this is just superficial and doesn't express how you feel. You don't feel joy, and nevertheless you should smile. Nevertheless, you should go out and dance. And this external behavior will affect your feelings and bring you joy. Even a forced laugh can affect the feelings in your heart. So Tzedek continues and brings Torah sources for this. The reason for this is because all of the actions that a person does affect his heart. As Maimonides writes, and this is the words of the Rambam about correcting various character traits. Maimonides says, do this a second time, a third time in your deeds, and the feeling will come into your heart. The first source the Tzedek brings is from the Rambam, the laws of Deis. Rambam says that there are different characteristics in a person, and there are some people that have gotten into a habit of negative characteristics, and they've gone to an extreme in various characteristics. So Rambam says that that a person should behave in the opposite extreme to get back to the middle road. And the Rambam says, although they'll feel a strain, they'll feel resistance. Nevertheless, if they continue to act in this way, this will become their behavior. As Rambam writes at length in chapter 4, in his 8-chapter introduction to ethics of our fathers, and this chapter also talks about how to be healed from various ailments of the soul. So, and also it says in Sefer HaChinuch and many other places that our actions affect our feelings. So, although their words do not need to be supported, but nevertheless, we can also bring a proof from Kabbalah for this. It says in Kabbalah, in the Pardes. In the Pardes, it talks about how various colors, a person should refrain from wearing various colors, and all this may not be relevant to everyone, but the Kabbalists are cautioned to wear various colors because those colors can affect their feelings. Walking next to water can affect feelings of kindness. So seemingly totally superficial. Like what's difference what you wear? What's difference where you walk? But based upon what we learned, we understand this. External behavior, actions affect your inner world, and we could also see this in the modern world that they decorate hospitals with encouraging colors so that the atmosphere will be calm and not strained, and the parents that decorate the children's rooms with colors, appropriate colors to create good feelings. The basic principle that comes out from what we're saying is this: guard your thoughts, words, and actions, not to think at all about your worries and things that'll make your heart weak. On the contrary, speak and do the opposite. And that is how you'll set the positive feelings in your heart. And so Hashem will bring a spirit from heaven to bring you joy and gladness of heart. From all that we've learned, we understand this. It's important to guard your thoughts, words, and actions, that they should not be about things that frighten you. The opposite, you should think and speak and do things that bring you joy, express joy, and this will this will also protect your feelings. So when a person does what he needs to do, then he does what he can do to bring himself to be calm and joyful. Hashem will also give him additional assistance from on high to be happy. Then the Tzemach continues. I've also heard from my grandfather that he heard from his Rebbe, the Mizitcha Magid. Tzemach is talking about an event that happened right before the passing of the Alter Rebbe. Tzemach was davening Ma'ariv, and he was in a morose. It was davening in a very bitter way. I think it was before that passing of the Alter Rebbe. Maybe that was what caused that feeling. Anyways, then the Alter Rebbe told Tzemach the following teaching. The Mizitcha Magid says on the verse, "Kemari Adam Olav Mamayla." On the surface, the verse is talking about the chariot of Hashem, and it says in Hashem's chariot there's an image of man upon the chariot. So Tzemach said that here from the Alter Rebbe, or from the Mizitcha Magid, that the image that Hashem shows a person, that Hashem responds to a person, depends on the image that a man shows. Ka'adam, Kamari Adam Lavamayla. It's like the image of man. What happens in Momayla, what happens in heaven, is Kamari Adam. It's like the way a person shows himself in this world. So therefore, a person has to make an effort to be happy and relaxed and to act with love and kindness. And by doing this, he'll draw from heaven the similar thing. And that's why Tzemach Tzedek continues, the Alter Rebbe prevented me from singing a song that expressed bitterness. When I daven Ma'ariv, he waited till I finished my davening. Tzemach Tzedek says, and then he told me this teaching. So the Tzemach Tzedek continues. We've seen so far a overview of a few different tools we can use to control our feelings, controlling our thoughts, talking with others, acting as if we're happy, physical movement, music, colors. Tzemach Tzedek continues and says this: it's appropriate that you should take away from yourself all feelings of negativity. A person should remove all fear from his heart, even from those things that warrant fear. And certainly in your situation, that there's nothing to be afraid of. Not health, not money, and especially, Tzemach Tzedek continues, it says in the Talmud that once Hashem gives a person kindness, it doesn't go away so fast. So Tzemach Tzedek said, I see how Hashem has treated you since this past summer, how there's been a chut of chesed, there's been a string of kindness, there's been a ray of kindness upon you, and the Gemara says that doesn't go away so quickly. So Tzemach Tzedek says this is only the seduction of the evil inclination, and you have to throw these thoughts away as if you're thinking about something which is forbidden, a bad thought, with the thoughts which are lewd thoughts. The Torah says, do not let your hearts go astray after bad thoughts. So too, the Tzemach Tzedek says you should view these thoughts of fear in a similar vein. So just like there's a biblical commandment, as Maimonides says, to distance ourselves from bad thoughts, so too should you distance yourself from this kind of thought of fear. But the question could be asked, if objective perspective will bring us to the conclusion there's no basis for fear, where does fear actually come from? So Tzemach Tzedek explains, fear comes from the seduction of the evil inclination. These are unhealthy feelings that come from the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara blinds a person to think about things about frightening things that have no that are not connected to him at all. If a person doesn't think about, just like a person not supposed to think about things which are lewd thoughts, etc., that's how you're supposed to address these thoughts as well. Just like that if the Yetzer Hara is trying to seduce you to sin against Hashem, you want to take those thoughts out of your mind. The Torah tells us not to think about these things. So too shall you remove your thoughts from these things as well. And Tzemach Tzedek concludes, if you want to be afraid of something, if you're looking for the mitzvah to fill a mitzvah of fear, I think he's saying like tongue in cheek, if you want to fulfill the mitzvah of fear, then you should focus on the words of the sages. The words, the secrets of the Torah are only given to someone whose heart is worried within him. In other words, use those thoughts of fear in order to be analytic on your own behavior and see how you can better your behavior. Okay. In other words, the Tzemach Tzedek is saying that everything in the world has also a divine spark. So if you find yourself to be so analytical, so use those thoughts of worry to better your behavior. And okay. Okay, so let me just conclude over here. So the Tzemach Tzedek concludes that you should want to use this fear for something positive. Use it to be introspective. And as the Talmud says, that's how you merit to learn the inner dimensions of the Torah. Um, our sages say that the secrets of Torah are only given to someone who is worried about a spiritual situation. So if you feel that you're worried, direct your worry to something that could be positive, and then you'll merit to learn the inner dimensions of the Torah, which will certainly animate you. Of course, we know that Rebbe says that this is not beneficial in our generation, where if we just think, if we're so introspective, we're going to just get depressed. Okay, that's the letter. That's the bottom line. Think Tzemach is the author of that statement as well. All right.